Mr. Diehl, you applauded the Supreme Court's ruling to overturn Roe versus Wade. Right now, healthcare professionals and abortion advocates are organizing to provide both access to the procedures as well as abortion pills to those from out of state. If elected, will you stop either of those things from happening?
No, Janet, and let me just clarify. You know, when Roe v. Wade came down with the Dobbs decision, I agreed with it, just like Ruth Bader Ginsburg felt that it shouldn't have been that federal court decision. It should be a state's issue, and it is a state's issue. And Massachusetts handled it by passing the Roe Act. Even though Charlie Baker had 2 objections in the Roe Act, they overrode him on those issues. It's the law of the land. My job is to protect women's health care choices, and I will do that. But also protecting women is beyond just abortion. There are other issues. There's issues like my running mate, Leah Allen, a nurse who was fired from her job because she didn't want to get a vaccine, because she was nursing a baby she had just had while she had been working on a COVID ward and did not think that the vaccine she was worried about the effect on her child. We should be protecting those women's choices as well. My wife runs a business. It was shut down during the pandemic. Did anybody protect those business owners like my wife? Those are women's choices. My 2 daughters were forced to go home from school and didn't get back into the classrooms for a year and a half because of decisions that were made not protecting their rights for an education. So there's women's rights beyond abortion that are important to protect.
Mr. Diehl.
But let's talk specifically about the abortion pills and the procedures for people from out of state. If the doctors and the abortion advocates need support from the state, are you willing to provide it, or will you try to stop it?
Look, I think Massachusetts should be helping Massachusetts citizens, but at the same time...
Will you try to stop abortion pills from being sent over outside of the state?
At the same time, I understand that the legislature has a different feeling, and no, I think it's going to stay, and we'll protect that.
Ms. Healey?
I just don't believe that. I mean, this is a real distinction in this race. And as somebody who has fought hard, both in the courtrooms and outside, to support a woman's right to an abortion, to make that choice for herself, you know, this is a race where my opponent celebrated when Roe was overturned. He celebrated it. He thinks it's a good decision and a good idea. He wants to defund Planned Parenthood. He said he wants to jail doctors who provide abortion care. And it stretches beyond that, because there was a time he didn't believe in contraception for any unmarried woman. This is not who we are, Massachusetts. I will be a governor who will protect reproductive freedom, who will support and protect our doctors, our providers, and who will always, always protect the right of a woman to make that intensely personal and often difficult decision for herself.
The section that the Roe Act that was objected by Governor Baker was Section 112.12p, which basically removes the protection of an infant born from a failed abortion to be given medical care by a doctor. To me, that's infanticide. That is what I consider to be something that's beyond the pale of abortion rights. Okay. The other thing too is I don't think you seem to understand the difference between governor and legislature. The governor enacts the laws or executes the laws that the legislature passes. As governor, I don't make the decision on the Roe Act. The legislature is a Democrat-controlled House and Senate. My estimation is that will be the case for a number of years. There is no way I'm changing that law. So to try to scare people, I know it's Halloween. Stop scaring people about abortion. It doesn't make any sense.
Ms. Healey.
I think many of us remember Justice Kavanaugh when he raised his right hand and swore an oath to never overturn Roe. I think that people should measure us by our record, by our actions, and my opponent's record and his actions on this could not be more clear. As I said, he does not support a woman's access to abortion. And the use of the term infanticide is just a rip from the Trump playbook, an extreme playbook that does not honor or respect a woman who is faced with an incredibly difficult decision. And I just find that really wrong. And again, as I'm committed as governor to do everything I can to stand up and protect the rights of women, to protect providers, because Massachusetts stands for and supports ensuring a woman's access to abortion.
My view on abortion, I just have to clarify, comes from personal experience. My parents made the decision to have me when Roe v. Wade was not the law. Had it been the law, I was told I may not have been here. Look, and that is my own personal experience I'm sharing with you. The fact is that just shapes my view on abortion. However, I also know in legislating that there are times when you have to put your personal decisions aside and understand that the legislature and the people of Massachusetts have spoken on this issue. Abortion will be protected when I'm governor, despite what she wants you to think.
It's just not true. The governor absolutely has a lot to do in this space. You think about a governor's administration, what they're going to do with mass health, what they're going to do with healthcare, what they're going to do across a range of agencies that directly intersect on this issue. It's just not the case that it doesn't matter who the governor is. If we didn't have Governor Baker doing what he did immediately following the Dobbs decision, in contrast to my opponent who was celebrating, Governor Baker worked hard with the legislature, my office worked with them as well, to make sure we had protections put in place. That's the kind of leadership we need. We don't need to be going backwards, especially on an issue that is so important. Protecting women's access to health care, protecting their reproductive choices, I don't think could be more clear in terms of where we are in this race.
That's time, Ms. Healey.